Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I got something very different in mind today. I got a copy of this book for the holidays, and over the past few days I've had a few hours to peruse the book, and I'm really happy with the purchase. I'm thrilled that I have it to add to my collection, and I thought I would share a little bit about it. Not all of my book buying experiences turned out so great, and I find that occasionally I bought a book thinking it had certain types of information in it that it just didn't have. So, like I say, I think what I'm going to try to do here is give a little bit of an abstract without violating any copyright information. I'm not going to give you too many nitty-gritty details, but I do want to give you a better idea of what's in this book for those of you out there that are thinking of adding it to your collection. And for those of you not familiar with this book, it's a 1995 edition. It's a book that's out of print. If you want to get a copy of it, you'll have to get it used, like the person who purchased this for me had to do. If it's not a comprehensive guide of all the tools that Stanley made between, say, 1860 and 1970, it's pretty close to a comprehensive list. Complete with pricing, and it's a good resource. So without further ado, let's get into it. So for nuts and bolts, this book's about 8.5 tall, 5.5 inches wide. It is a solid 900 pages or so. It's packed with information, and I would say the point size is about a 10 point. It's not a very big font, so you have to have a pretty good set of eyes to be able to read this. I have on occasions had to break out my magnifying glass, make sure I have good light, or both. But what I want to do is spend a few minutes on the table of contents, because I was just astonished with how much information is in this book, and I really thought I'd like to share. So I'll go over this in some level of detail, and then we'll spend a few minutes looking at some of the pages in here to give you an idea of what the book is all about. So it starts up here, acknowledgments, forward, introduction. He gives you several pages on how to use the guide from a pricing point of view. He tries his best to define various conditions, and then he gives you a low and high price. And low price is what he considers a tool in good condition, and the high price is in mint condition. Also talks a little bit about various ins and outs and things to watch out for if you want to get into the hobby or the industry of collecting tools. And then he gives a discussion on his tool categories, because here are the categories down here. He breaks all the Stanley tools into these categories, and up here he just kind of tells you what he's thinking or what the category is all about. Then he's got a table on early Stanley acquisitions and a brief history of Stanley, which is 30 pages, so I guess brief as a matter of opinion. So for the tool listings, kind of in alphabetical order, and I'll just read them off quickly. But A is for advertising, then there's instructional literature, memorabilia. B starts with the bit braces. C is for catalogs, pocket catalogs, miscellany catalogs. C is for chisels. Then for D, he's got the modern Defiance tools, not to be confused with the earlier Bailey Defiance tools. And for the Defiance, I have a number 4 Defiance plane that I've done a few videos on. Hand and breast drills for D. F is the 4-square line of tools, which I have a 4-square number 5 plane right here that I've done a couple videos on. G is gauges, hammers and mallets, hatchets, levels, mechanics tools, miscellaneous tools, miter tools, planes. Then in the P's is also plumb bobs. R is rules, awful lot of Stanley rules, screwdrivers, spoke shaves, squares and bevels, tape measures, tool cabinets and sets, tool handles and awls, Dremel points, vices, and zigzag rules. So there's all the tools in the various categories. Then up here I was pleasantly surprised. I was just interested in the type study of the number 4 Stanley Bailey plane, but there's a whole bunch of type studies in here. So there's the number 1 through number 8, Stanley Bailey. This is the iron planes. He's got a type study on the Excelsior block planes, number 9.5 family. Stanley number 18 and 19 knuckle joint block planes. Bailey Stanley wood bottom planes, 21 to 37. Then the Stanley 41, 42, 43, 44 Miller's patent plow planes. There's type study on the 45, the 46, the 50, 71, 71.5. The number 110 block plane. Bedrock planes, Stanley levels, got a whole type study on that. Then boxwood and ivory rule trademark comparison, and Stanley toolbox label type comparison, type study on that. I mean, how cool is that? Then he's got pages and pages on the Stanley patents. And that's basically what's in the book. Now let me just spend a couple minutes showing you some of the things. This is the introduction, talking about pricing. And up here, this is his table where he kind of declares what he thinks mint is, what good is, and poor, and everything in between. So his low prices are in the good category, from what I understand, and the high prices are mint. This is a discussion of those cool tool categories that I just went over. He sheds a little color on what the categories are, a little bit of a history, etc. Up here is a table or a list of Stanley early acquisitions, and this is part of the history I was telling you about, 30 pages. And finally we get into the tools and whatnot, and this starts with the advertising for the A's. And let's jump a little further back. B's is bit braces. These are catalogs in here, pocket catalogs. And finally we get to the Defiance tools. Goes over the list of them. And here is my Defiance 1204 that I've done a couple videos on. And here it's listed in his catalog, manufactured 1925 to 1953. And the patents are the same as the 1202. The cutter's 2 inches wide, the plane's 9 inches long. Construction is cast iron, hardwood handles. Finish is japanned with a red lacquer. And he claims the average price is $10 to $40 in 1995 prices. And let's move on. This is drills. Now we're into the Foursquare. And here's the Foursquare 1105, which I've done a couple videos on my Foursquare 1105. Claims the 1105 Foursquare jack plane. Features the Foursquare logo on the cap. Manufactured 1930 to 1936. And the patents were the same as the household jack plane down here. 14 inches long, cast iron, hardwood handle and knob. Gray enameled handles finished in red, 2 inches wide. And he claims $25 to $75 in 1995 prices. Again, the 25 would be for a user in good condition, 75 would be for tool in mint condition. And I don't want to go over every page here, obviously, but here's hammers and hatchets, pages and pages on rules. This is miscellaneous. And finally we get into the planes. All kinds of planes. Then we're into rules, lots of rules, because it was a Stanley rule and level company. Screwdrivers, spoke shaves, squares and bevels, and finally we get past the zigzag rules and we get to the next section, which is type studies. And here are some of the pages showing you the work of the type studies, all the details, what to look for. And here's the Excelsior. This is the number 45, and it just goes and goes. And finally we get to the patents. Patents on bit braces, patents on the miters, spoke shave patents, etc., etc. And finally a glossary and an index. And there you have it. This is aimed of you out there that have considered trying to get a copy of this book. Hopefully this video shed a little more light and convinced you either one way or the other that this was for you. And as always, that's all I got for now. Thanks for stopping by, and I look forward to catching up with you all on the next one.